Hi, I'm David. In this video I'd like to show you how I make Greene and Greene style finger joints with a router. There are several ways to do it. The way I like to do it is this way. For this joint it's going to be 6 inches long. It's going to have 5 fingers in it, and the 5 sizes, or the sizes of them, are going to be 1 inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half, in a manner that it adds up to exactly the thickness that we're working with here. When I make the finger joints, I start with a piece of MDF, half-inch thick, that represents the thickness of each finger as it's going to be. Now in this one, you see the 3 sizes. In the joint itself, it's going to be with the smallest one on the outside, the largest one in the middle, and one piece will have 3 fingers, one piece will have 2 fingers. I'm going to mount those 5 fingers onto this glue-up of plywood. This is 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, basically scrap. It's important when you cut this that you end up with square corners in all dimensions. It's got to be square. I'm going to be attaching the 5 finger pieces to this board. To start off with, I'm going to take a temporary plate, just for registration purposes, and attach it to the... And then I will be gluing these pieces in, more accurately that way, in a sequence to show how the finger joints go together. Okay, when I attach them, I use glue and screws just to be confident that it will hold. Sometimes the MDF will delaminate if you simply glue it, so a little extra help. So put the first one in. Now notice I've registered it to the plate, and I've left at least half the diameter of the bit. I will then put my next one in for the next size, and I will also add a little bit of paper, just simple yellow paper, purposely put there to loosen up the joint, just to make sure I'm not trying to get a perfect fit. It's got to be a little room for glue, a little room for slop. And I proceed this way until I get them all in place. And I'm using one of the leftover pieces here to make sure that the piece doesn't wander in the direction it goes. I'm only using 1 piece per joint, since this piece opens up this gap by approximately 3/1000 of an inch. I'll put this in to help hold that tight. I will clamp it just to make sure I don't get things varying, and away I go. So what I have here now are all 5 fingers glued and screwed in place, and as I pull out the leftover pieces, should be obvious. Get rid of the samples that I've now opened this joint, this joint, this joint. They've all now opened up a little bit. One thing we need to be careful of is that there is no glue drops that fall down underneath the fingers that block the wood from coming up and registering solidly to it. Also, might as well check anywhere around it, clean up any loose glue, any fuzz, whatever from the cuts. Make sure it's as clean and neat as possible at this point. Now that the glue has had a chance to dry, we're going to attach our wood to it. I have marked a reference side that I put the first finger flush to, so I know which side I'm working with in case they're both close and I might make a mistake. Write all over the fixture, because it's so much easier to write on it than to come back later and say, oh golly darn, I made a mistake. So I'm going to set the reference side down flush. I've taken my 2 pieces. Hypothetically, I know which one's going to be the drawer face, the drawer side, or the front or side of the cabinet. But I've marked them for reference, so I always know which side I'm working with. And those will also go down match. I will set them up tight so they're flush with the front of the fixture, tight up against the fingers, and clamp. Okay, we've clamped it as tight as we can get, both sides, somewhere towards the top. So everything is mounted straight, tight, clean as it's going to be. I've mounted the vise and clamped it tight. Okay, before we turn the router on, let's review a couple of quick things. The fingers have to stand back from the piece of wood enough so the router can get all the way in past the halfway point of the blade, so that when it cuts, it doesn't leave any odd little filleting in there. Also, the depth of the router bit has got to be set so that you have enough clearance through the 1/2 inch MDF. You need to go down into this piece of wood, the thickness of the wood, plus however much you want the finger to stand proud. So in this case, I've got 3/4 inch thick wood, I've got 1/8 inch extension I'm interested in, I've got 1/2 inch of MDF, and somewhere in all, 5/8, 3/4, that ends up to be what? 1 3/8 inch extension from the base to the tip of the router bit. A couple more things to be aware of when we start cutting. The first couple of cuts will be climb cuts. Technically the wrong way, we're going to go with the bit instead of the cut, but there will be very, very light cuts intended just to create a nice defined edge without tear out or with a minimal amount of tear out. Once that's defined, then I will go back and clean it up. Also, when we start making the first cut into the plywood, the various veneers and laminations are going to try to break up. It's going to get noisy, it's going to sound ugly. That's okay. The second time you use the fixture, it will be a lot better. It will make a little bit more sense to you. But the first time, don't worry too much about the noises. One thing before you take it apart is to double check, run your fingers past everything, and make sure some little piece of detritus didn't get in the way and block the bit out. Just make sure you've got nice, good cuts all the way around. Okay, here are the two pieces we've pulled from the jig. You can see 3 fingers on one, 2 on the other. Got my reference sighted, set with each other, and we'll just see how well they go together. First time, no safety net, and I think that's pretty good. There you have a joint ready to round over the corners, and away you go. If you did your fixture correctly with square corners, as soon as you pull that together with screws, it will also be square. No way for it not to be if you've done your job correctly. I think you'll find this technique is fairly robust, that it can be done many ways, different shapes, sizes. You can see 7 fingers here, 3 fingers. I used only partial of the thickness. One thing about these is when you're done with that joint, you want to make something else another time, break those off, saw it clean, start all over again, keep using that plywood piece. If you do a lot of it, you'll find that for different thicknesses of wood, you have to go to different router bits. So you'll end up with a selection of pattern bits where you've got maybe 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/8, 1 inch extensions, 1/2 inch extensions, whatever works based on the project you're working on.